Today, we are digging into the story of a true giant of mathematics, Georg Cantor. This is the man who stared into the abyss of infinity and came back with answers that changed everything. But here's the twist. A secret, buried for 150 years, has just come to light, and it forces us to ask a really tough question. Was one of the greatest breakthroughs in math actually built on a lie?
Right. So let's just let that sink in. This claim from Quantum magazine is, well, it's explosive. It's saying that one of the most fundamental papers in all of modern math, the one that proved there are different kinds of infinity, wasn't just groundbreaking, it was stolen. Now, for anyone who's ever worked in research, this story hits really close to home. It gets right to the heart of collaboration, credit, and academic honesty.
And this is the smoking gun. This letter right here. For the longest time, everyone thought it was lost forever, probably destroyed during World War II. But its discovery is what cracks this whole historical detective story wide open. It is the one piece of evidence that historians were missing for more than a century.
Now, you might think our story starts way back then, in the 19th century, but it doesn't. It actually starts in March of 2025, when a mathematician and journalist decided to follow a crazy hunch.
Meet Demian Goos. He was doing some research for his math history podcast, and he travels to the University of Halle in Germany, where Cantor used to work. He was just hoping to find some letters from Cantor's estate, to add a little color to an old story. He had absolutely no idea he was about to blow the whole thing up and rewrite it from scratch.
So there he is, and inside this totally ordinary, thin blue binder, he finds what generations of historians had basically declared a lost cause. It's a letter from another brilliant mathematician, Richard Dedekind, written to Georg Cantor. And the date was everything. November 30th, 1873. That date proved that Dedekind had handed Cantor a critical piece of the puzzle right before Cantor went and published his world-changing paper, all by himself.
Okay, so to really get why this is such a huge deal, we need to take a step back. Let's go back to the 1800s and understand just how dangerous the whole idea of infinity was back then.
Yeah, you heard that right. People called it a mathematical malignancy. See, infinity wasn't just a concept for a really big number. It was seen as something that broke logic. It created all these paradoxes, and even worse, it was seen as a challenge to the church, because God was supposed to be the only true infinity. So to even suggest you could treat it like a number, something you could work with, that was borderline heresy.
I mean, listen to this. Carl Friedrich Gauss, who was basically the final boss of mathematics in that era, he just dismissed the whole thing. He said infinity was just a figure of speech. That was the mainstream establishment view. So you can imagine the kind of guts, or maybe ambition, it took to stand up and challenge that.
And that challenge, it didn't come from just one person. It came from two. A collaboration between two very, very different men, Georg Cantor and Richard Dedekind.
So here they are. You've got Georg Cantor on one side. He's young, he's ambitious, he's really hungry for recognition. And then you have Richard Dedekind. He's older, much more reserved, and incredibly careful in his work. Their friendship was about to change math forever, but it would also become a pretty powerful cautionary tale about where collaboration ends and exploitation begins.
I mean, look at this. The two were like night and day. Cantor was the loud, ambitious, publish or perish kind of guy. Dedekind was the quiet, methodical thinker who almost never published. You can already see the potential for a serious clash of styles here, right? It's a dynamic that probably feels pretty familiar to a lot of people working in academia today.
This is where it all started. They met in this beautiful village in Switzerland back in 1872, and they hit it off immediately. They just clicked, bonding over this shared obsession with the deep nature of numbers, and of course, that forbidden, fascinating topic, infinity. This was the start of a really intense friendship.
And that brings us to the fall of 1873. This is the moment where that intense collaborative friendship tips over into something that looks a lot like a heist. Just look at how fast this all went down. November 29th, Cantor writes to Dedekind, basically saying, "I'm stuck." The very next day, Dedekind replies with a crucial proof for one part of the problem. A week later, Cantor sends back his own messy, confusing proof for the bigger idea. So what does Dedekind do? He cleans it up and sends back a beautifully simple version. And then, on Christmas Day of all days, Cantor submits the final paper with only his name on it.
So it seems like Cantor had a two-part plan. First, build a Trojan horse. He gave the paper a really boring, misleading title about algebraic numbers, the part Dedekind had helped him with, so it would sneak past the journal's editor who hated his ideas. And second, and this is the really devastating part, erase the collaborator. He claimed all the work as his own, using Dedekind's elegant proof and completely writing him out of the story.
And Dedekind, oh, he knew. He knew exactly what had happened. He wrote this note just for himself, pointing out that his own proofs were in Cantor's paper almost word for word. He clearly saw the betrayal, but he never went public with it, probably because in that era, you just didn't do that. It wasn't proper.
So if Dedekind kept quiet, how on earth did this all come out 150 years later? Well, let's get back to our modern-day historical detective, Demian Goos.
Well, the first clues actually popped up way back in 1937, in a book that published some of their letters. But it was only half the story. It had all of Cantor's letters to Dedekind, but none of Dedekind's crucial replies. It was like trying to understand a mystery by only hearing one side of a phone call. The proof just wasn't there.
And because of that, the official story for decades was that those letters were just gone. Lost in the war. I mean, plenty of experts had looked for them and came up with nothing. The case was completely cold. That's the brick wall Goos was up against.
But Goos just didn't let it go. He did some incredible detective work. He actually tracked down Cantor's living great-granddaughter, and she told him, "Oh yeah, I donated all those papers to the University of Halle years ago." It was an unbelievable break that led him right to that thin blue binder and to the letter that changed everything. So, now we know. What does this do to Georg Cantor's legacy? Do we just throw it all out? Does this act of plagiarism erase him from the history books?
I think this quote from the historian Jose Ferreros just hits the nail on the head. We love this idea of the lone genius, right? This one hero who changes the world all by themselves. But as he says, that's always a lie. Real science, even pure math, it just doesn't work that way.
So what this story really shows us is that science is a team sport. It's a collective thing. It reminds us that credit and authorship and ethics, these are deeply human problems, driven by ambition and pressure and fear, even in a field as abstract as pure math. Cantor's legacy isn't destroyed, he's just human now. He's no longer a god of mathematics, he's a brilliant, complicated person who made a really big mistake. And honestly, that's a much more valuable story.
And that leaves us with this huge, messy question that is just as relevant today as it was in 1873. Especially for anyone in a competitive academic field. In this intense race for knowledge, for breakthroughs, where do we draw that line between healthy collaboration and outright theft? Cantor's story doesn't give us a simple answer, but it's a powerful reminder that giving credit where it's due is every bit as important as getting it.